is part of our responsibility. How do we do this? In that tape, Yolanda pointed out, for example, that in your world, your creative field, which you center, there may develop a pressure pattern, most of which we cause for ourselves. But anyway, the pressure pattern develops, and pressure patterns can develop just in the creative process, which is fine, increasingly fine if we know how to let that situation, if what needs to be done specifically does not come immediately to mind, because probably of a lack of qualitative substance in the consciousness of this form, then there is a process whereby we may begin to let this pressure situation, for which we have some responsibility, to be connected up into cosmic mind, which certainly has all the answers, because it's doing, cosmic mind is doing one thing simultaneously everywhere throughout the whole cosmos in any given moment. It's all coordinated. So if we find a pressure pattern developing in our field, it is related to the whole. And human beings, in their relatively unconscious state, have usually used prayer. A pressure situation develops in their world and they pray. Unfortunately, their prayer is not the true process. Usually the human ego, consciousness prayer is to think what it thinks would be creative in an isolated sense and ask cosmic mind, God, the Lord, the whole, to do that. I'm suggesting that there is, in fact, a true prayer in this way. There is a way of letting, is that word, letting the situation be offered to the Lord, to cosmic mind, the higher levels of consciousness, inviting those levels of intelligence to come into one's world. And interestingly enough, I have found from experience, and you may have too, that very often inviting cosmic mind to come into the situation, the biggest part of what comes into the situation actually comes through oneself. I remember a situation where there was someone in my environment, and I'd been concerned about this situation. It was quite a thorn in the emotional flesh. And if I'd been praying in the usual way, I would have prayed for this person to be posted to Glen Ivy. Anyway, I went through this process that I've just described of offering up. And in the midst of that process, I became aware that actually what I needed to do was to enfold that person. Because the process in my own heart had been to start pushing and rejecting. Exactly the opposite was actually what was required. And in the process of offering it, my responsibility in the overall picture was to make space in my consciousness and heart to accommodate that. person. And having done that, something was introduced into the situation which was not there before. Now, cosmic mind was no doubt doing something relative to this person and the situations through other aspects of the design of life, but that's what came for me to do. And the person's still around. So, true prayer, that process, is a way of making connection, of connecting your world, for which you have responsibility, with cosmic mind, so that the purposes of the whole can be implemented through the connecting link which one rightly is. So there is prayer that we experience upwards. But there is another direction of responsibility for which we carry also, and that is recognizing that we are a part of cosmic mind, a link in the chain, and there are factors in your world, below you, around you, which are praying to you. Most people, of course, aren't aware of that. They're quite keen to get cosmic mind to sort out their pressure patterns. But very few human consciousnesses have awoken to the responsibility of being a part of cosmic mind and therefore answering prayer, which comes to us from our creative field. Now, every moment of life is part of the experience of cosmic mind. Therefore, every person which appears in consciousness is part of our responsibility in cosmic mind. The responsibilities of angelic being in human form and in consciousness. It may not even be, it certainly may be people. The interaction with people is a part of our answering of prayer. Very often people come, sometimes they're very pleasant towards us. Well, you have prayers of praise. They're very nice. Very nice when people like us and want to help us and do things and so on. Well, that's fine. But then there are other prayers which ascend to us where we are in the design. It may be, probably a woman would notice it more, or not necessarily, but one of these drapes behind me may be have one of the rings off or something. Now, somebody may notice that. Well, could be viewed as a prayer. That object, which has its own level of consciousness and is part of the design, it enters our consciousness that something is required in the creative process. And we have opportunity to answer that prayer. We may do it ourselves, we may take note of it and have someone else do it, but it's all part of the processes of cosmic mind. And so our interaction in cosmic mind, moment by moment, is vital in every sense of that word. It is exciting. And human consciousness has been largely unconscious of its creative responsibilities. Attunement